She knows what she wants tonight. Moves fast like a neon tide. Confidence in every line. She's got style to find.
The Package. Chapter 3. The sounds of approaching sirens grew louder, piercing the steady drum of the rain. Shield backup was arriving. Within minutes, a black SUV, reinforced and armored, backed into the warehouse. Agents swarmed in, their faces grim, quickly securing the perimeter and the bewildered Jax. "Clear the area," a stern voice commanded as Agent Coulson stepped from the SUV, his eyes immediately falling on the faintly glowing briefcase. He walked directly to it, his expression unreadable, before looking at May. "Report, Agent May." May gave a concise rundown, detailing Jax's role, the device's unknown contents, and its unexpected self-containment. Bobby added details on the target's movements and the initial threat assessment, while Natasha explained her readings and the device's apparent self-correction. Centipede's getting bolder and more desperate if they're entrusting something this volatile to a low-level operative. He gestured to two hazmat-suited technicians who carefully approached the briefcase with specialized tongs and a heavily shielded containment unit. "Get this to the highest level of containment, immediately. No stops. And I want a full forensics team on that operative, every single detail." Jax was quickly escorted away, no longer whimpering, but looking utterly defeated. The hazmat team, moving with practiced precision, gently placed the still glowing briefcase into the containment unit, the green light now barely visible through the thick shielding. As the containment unit was loaded into a secure transport, Coulson turned back to his three agents. "Excellent work, all of you. You prevented what could have been a catastrophic event. We'll debrief at the playground, 0600. And May," he paused, a slight, unreadable flicker in his eyes, "your quick thinking was, as always, invaluable." May simply nodded, her expression as stoic as ever, but as she watched the transport disappear into the rain-swept night, she couldn't shake the lingering heat in her palms, or the image of that sickening green light. They had contained the package, yes, but what secrets still lay within it, waiting to be unleashed? The faint glow of the centipede device had barely vanished into the night when Natasha Romanoff made her move. As Coulson issued orders, as Bobby and May exchanged brief, weary glances with the arriving backup, the Black Widow simply wasn't there. One moment, she was part of the tableau, a shadow among shadows. The next, she was gone, her departure as fluid and silent as a wisp of smoke. No goodbyes, no explanations, just a void where she had been. May, always attuned to her surroundings, felt the subtle shift first. Her eyes, sharper than most, flickered to the empty space where Natasha had stood. A faint, almost imperceptible twitch of her brow was the only outward sign. Bobby, engrossed in supervising Jax's transfer, didn't notice. Coulson, satisfied that the package was secure, was already turning to head for his vehicle, his mind undoubtedly on the impending debriefing. Hours later, the rain had finally begun to let up, leaving the abandoned warehouse dripping and forlorn. The last SHIELD vehicle had long since departed, leaving behind only the ghosts of their presence, scuff marks on the floor, the faint scent of ozone, and the lingering chill of a recent confrontation. From the deepest shadows, where even the moonlight struggled to penetrate, two figures emerged. They moved with a practiced stealth that rivaled even the most elite SHIELD agents. The first was tall, with a gaunt frame and eyes that seemed to absorb the minimal light around them. This was Shadow, a centipede operative whispered about more often than seen, known for his uncanny ability to blend into his environment and his utter lack of a digital footprint. He seemed to flow rather than walk, his movements disturbingly fluid. The second operative was smaller, more compact. clad in practical, dark combat gear. He moved with a restless energy, his head swiveling, scanning the empty space. "They took it," he growled, his voice a low rasp. "The package is gone." Shadow's voice was dry, devoid of emotion. "Expected. This was always a reconnaissance mission, Wraith, to gauge SEALD's response, their capabilities." He gestured vaguely towards the spot where the briefcase had been, "and to confirm the device's stability protocols." Wraith kicked a loose piece of debris, his frustration palpable. "And now, we report failure?" "We report data," he corrected him. "The device is secure for now. Our objective shifts. We locate it, we extract it, and we eliminate any complications." He paused, his head tilting slightly as if listening to something beyond human hearing. "SHIELD has a tendency to underestimate the breadth of our reach." He moved towards the main exit, his form melting into the remaining shadows. Wraith, still simmering, followed, casting one last resentful glance at the empty space. But they were not alone. High above, nestled among the rain-slicked rafters, a single unblinking pair of eyes watched their every move. Natasha Romanoff had not left. She had merely receded, becoming one with the darkness, waiting. She had overheard their conversation, the chilling confirmation that this package was far from a one-off. It was part of a larger plan. As Shadow and Wraith slipped out into the still, damp night, Natasha unwound herself from her perch, her descent silent and effortless. She chose her target, Wraith. He was the more agitated of the two, likely to make mistakes, and potentially more inclined to lead her to something significant. She followed, a ghost trailing a ghost, her every movement precise, her senses alive. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still slick, reflecting the distant city lights. Wraith, oblivious to the silent predator on his trail, moved quickly, heading for the anonymity of the urban sprawl. Natasha kept her distance, a dark figure against the muted backdrop, ready to disappear if needed, but resolved to stick to her quarry until he led her to whatever or whoever came next. The fluorescent lights of the SHIELD Playground's primary analysis lab hummed with an almost oppressive intensity, reflecting off the pristine surfaces of cutting-edge diagnostic equipment. Phil Coulson stood before a holographic display, the faint green outline of the centipede device rotating slowly. Melinda May and Daisy Johnson were beside him, their expressions grim. Across the lab, Leo Fitz and Gemma Simmons, their faces alight with a unique blend of scientific curiosity and mild alarm, were poring over data streams. "Initial scans confirm what Agent Romanoff theorized," Simmons began, pushing her glasses further up her nose. "The device is a highly unstable energy accumulator. It draws ambient energy, kinetic, thermo, even electromagnetic, and condenses it into a volatile core." "And the self-containment protocol?" Coulson asked, tapping a finger on the holographic projection. "That's the fascinating part," Fitz chimed in, gesturing wildly at a complex waveform on his tablet. "It's not truly a failsafe. It's more of a pressure valve. When the internal energy reached critical mass, the device initiated a partial lockdown, temporarily stabilizing the core by shunting off excess energy into a localized field around itself. Agent May essentially acted as a physical conduit, dispersing some of that runaway energy just enough for the internal system to kick in." May, who had been listening with her usual stoicism, felt a familiar tingle in her palms. She hadn't just been lucky, she'd been an integral part of the device's strange mechanics. "So it wasn't designed to explode, not directly. It was designed to absorb and store. But for what purpose?" Daisy mused, her brow furrowed. "That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?" Coulson said, his gaze sweeping over the data. "We've identified trace elements within the device's casing, unique alloys, almost certainly alien in origin, though processed with human technology. Centipede is integrating Chitauri tech, or something similar, into their operations."
Which makes this infinitely more dangerous, Simmons concluded gravely. If they can weaponize ambient energy on this scale, there's no telling what they could do. And why did they trust a grunt like Jax with it? May asked, her voice low. He was barely capable of transporting it, let alone activating a complex shutdown sequence. Perhaps they weren't expecting him to, but rather to provide a target for us, a test, to see how we react to an unknown, highly volatile energy signature. He looked at Daisy. Get your team on deep dives into Centipede's financial and logistical networks. I want to know where they're getting these alien components and who's funding it. On it, sir, Daisy replied, already moving towards her own console. And Fitz, Simmons, I want you to work on developing a more permanent containment solution for this thing, something that can completely neutralize its energy absorption. And May, Coulson turned to her, a rare intensity in his gaze, I need you to prepare a comprehensive tactical assessment of Centipede's current known operatives and their likely objectives. This package suggests a shift in their strategy. The debriefing concluded, the air thick with unspoken threats and the weight of a new, unsettling puzzle. They had the device, but the true threat remained at large. Miles away, in the labyrinthine alleyways of the city's industrial district, Natasha Romanoff moved with the silent grace of a hunter. Wraith, the Centipede operative, was proving to be an efficient, if predictable, target. He moved through the urban landscape like a shadow, weaving through back streets and abandoned lots, clearly heading for a prearranged rendezvous. Natasha maintained her distance, using the ambient noise of the city, a distant train, the rumble of a late-night delivery truck, to mask her own movements. Her eyes, honed by years of espionage, noted every detail. The subtle twitch of Wraith's head as he checked his six, the precise way he used the angles of buildings for cover, the faint glint of a comms earpiece in his ear. He was good, but not good enough to shake the Black Widow. He led her deeper into the neglected heart of the city, past derelict factories and graffiti-scarred walls. The air grew heavy with the scent of damped concrete and something metallic, almost electrical. Then she saw it, a rusted, nondescript warehouse, its windows boarded up, its single service door seemingly welded shut. No visible security, no obvious lights. Perfect for a clandestine meeting. Wraith approached the door, pausing for a moment, his hand moving to a specific point on the grimy metal. A faint click, almost inaudible, reached Natasha's ears, and the door hissed open just enough for him to slip inside. Natasha waited. She counted to 20, allowing Wraith to establish himself inside. Then, as silently as a ghost, she moved. Her hand found the precise spot Wraith had touched, her fingers expertly tracing the almost invisible seam of the hidden mechanism. Another soft click, and the door gave way, revealing a sliver of darkness. She paused, listening. A low hum emanated within the warehouse, a familiar, unsettling sound. And then voices, more than just Wraith. Natasha Romanoff slipped through the gap, melting into the shadows of the warehouse, her senses on high alert. Wraith had led her exactly where she needed to be. The air inside the warehouse was thick with the scent of ozone and something metallic, like burnt circuitry. The low hum Natasha had detected outside was more pronounced here, a resonant thrum that vibrated through the very floor. Dim, strategically placed work lights cast long, distorted shadows, illuminating a scene that made even the Black Widow's seasoned instincts prickle. This was no ordinary Centipede safe house. The warehouse was a hive of clandestine activity. At its center, a large cylindrical chamber of what looked like heavily reinforced glass glowed with a faint pulsing blue light. Wires snaked from it to an array of complex machinery, monitors displaying intricate energy readings and schematics. This was clearly the heart of their operation. Several Centipede operatives moved with focused purpose around the chamber. Wraith was there, speaking urgently into a comms unit, his back to Natasha. But it was the other figures that drew her immediate attention. Two figures stood directly in front of the glowing chamber, seemingly directing the others. One was a woman, sharp features and radiating an icy intelligence, with short, precise dark hair. She held a tablet, her eyes fixed on the blue light. The other was a man, powerfully built with a cruel, calculating set to his jaw. He barked orders, his voice rough and commanding. These were not mere grunts. And then Natasha saw Shadow. He stood slightly apart from the main group, a true specter in the dim light, his form almost blending with the shadows even when he was clearly visible. He wasn't involved in the hands-on work, but his gaze, fixed on the blue chamber, held an unsettling intensity. He was observing, assessing, his presence a silent weight in the room. The low hum suddenly intensified, and the blue light within the chamber pulsed brighter. On the monitors, the energy readings spiked. "It's stabilizing," the sharp-featured woman announced, her voice surprisingly calm despite the escalating energy. "Good," the powerful man growled. "We need it at peak capacity for the next phase. Have you isolated the cause of the spontaneous containment from the field?" The woman frowned, tapping her tablet. "Still analyzing the residual energy signatures. There was an anomalous biological interaction during the critical overload phase. An unexpected variable. We're running simulations, but it's proving difficult to replicate." Natasha's mind raced. An anomalous biological interaction. May. They were talking about May. Her intervention hadn't just been luck, it had fundamentally altered something in the device. Shadow shifted, his head tilting almost imperceptibly, as if sensing something. His eyes, dark and unreadable, swept across the upper reaches of the warehouse. Natasha froze, pressing herself tighter into the shadows. He hadn't seen her, not directly, but he was aware. His perception was unnerving. Suddenly, the powerful man snapped his fingers. "Wraith, prepare the transport. We're moving the core to Site Gamma as soon as stabilization is complete. The director wants eyes on this, personally." Wraith acknowledged, turning to gather equipment. As he moved, Natasha caught a glimpse of something on the floor near the central chamber. It was another one of the reinforced briefcases, identical to the one S.H.I.E.L.D. had recovered. But this one was open, and inside, resting on a velvet ring, was a single obsidian black shard, no bigger than a thumbnail. It shimmered faintly, absorbing the ambient light around it. A Chitauri power source! Natasha recognized the signature. This wasn't just energy accumulation. They were harnessing alien power, using it to fuel something far greater. The hum intensified further, the blue light now bathing the entire central area in an ethereal glow. The centipede operatives moved with renewed urgency, a sense of an imminent transfer in the air. Natasha knew she couldn't risk a direct engagement here. Not yet, not with Shadow present, and with so many unknowns. But she had seen enough. This was bigger than a mere operative and a single package. This was a full-scale research and development operation with alien technology at its core. She needed to get this information back to S.H.I.E.L.D. But first, she needed to know where Site Gamma was, and the only way to do that was to continue to follow. As the powerful man barked more orders and the sharp-featured woman began to interface directly with the glowing chamber, Natasha began to carefully, meticulously, extract herself from the warehouse, her eyes still fixed on the obsidian shard. She would report, but she would also track. The chase, she knew, was far from over.
Back in the cool, damp night air, Natasha pressed herself against the grimy exterior of the warehouse. She could hear the distinct growl of a heavy-duty engine rumbling to life inside. It was a truck, armored, judging by the deep thrum. This was the transport for the core. She needed to get eyes on it without being seen. Within minutes, the main loading bay door of the warehouse, a massive, rusted metal slab, began to groan open. The blue light from inside pulsed intensely for a moment, then dimmed as the truck, a nondescript, dark-colored semi-trailer, slowly backed out. It was heavily reinforced, no windows, just a solid block of steel. Behind it, a sleek, dark SUV followed, undoubtedly carrying the higher-ranking operatives. Natasha melted into the shadows of a neighboring building, her eyes locked on the convoy. This was her chance. She wouldn't try to stop them now. She would follow.
The convoy moved with a surprising lack of urgency, as if confident in its anonymity. They avoided main roads, sticking to the maze of industrial service routes and quieter highways that snaked through the outskirts of the city. Natasha, on a stolen but unremarkable motorcycle, kept a careful distance. Her reflection in the puddles on the road showed a dark, almost invisible silhouette. She used every trick in her extensive playbook, driving without lights for stretches, cutting through abandoned lots to avoid choke points, and utilizing the cover of trees and derelict buildings whenever possible. Her comms were off. Any transmission could be intercepted. This was a solo operation, for now. The journey was long, taking them east, then north, deeper into the less populated areas of the state. The industrial landscape slowly gave way to dense, rolling woodland. Natasha's mind worked furiously, trying to anticipate their destination. A remote military base? A forgotten underground bunker? After nearly an hour of relentless pursuit, the convoy finally turned off the highway onto a narrow, unpaved road that wound deep into a dense forest. Site Gamma, Natasha murmured to herself, her voice a low breath. The road was barely visible, overgrown with brush, designed for secrecy. She killed the motorcycle's engine, coasting silently into a thick copse of trees a quarter-mile from the turnoff. She dismounted, securing the bike, and continued on foot, her movements as fluid as the shadows she now became a part of. The air here was cooler, damp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. Ahead, through the trees, she could just make out the glint of barbed wire and the outline of a formidable fence. Beyond that, nestled deep within the natural camouflage of the forest, were the faint lights of a heavily fortified compound. No obvious signs, no large gates, just a discreet, almost invisible entrance carved out of the wilderness. This was Site Gamma. Natasha found a vantage point high up in a sturdy oak tree, carefully camouflaging herself amidst the thick foliage. From her perch, she could observe the entrance. The truck and SUV were pulling into a hidden loading bay that seemed to disappear into the side of a reinforced hill. Armed guards, heavily equipped, patrolled the perimeter. Security cameras were meticulously placed, their lenses sweeping the tree line. She pulled out a small, high-powered monocular, zooming in on the entrance. As the vehicles disappeared inside, she saw the powerfully built man and the sharp-featured woman emerge from the SUV, followed closely by Wraith. Shadow, of course, was already inside, his presence too subtle for even the security cameras to detect. Natasha knew she couldn't simply walk in. This was a major centipede stronghold. But now she had a location. Now she had the intelligence. She raised her wrist, activating her secure comms, a decision made, the risk calculated. "Black Widow to Watchtower," she whispered into the mic, her voice barely audible over the rustle of leaves. "I have a location for Centipede, designated Site Gamma. Repeat, I have a location." The moment Natasha's signal hit the secure network, the playground lit up with a controlled urgency. Phil Coulson, Melinda May, and Daisy Johnson were still in the lab, poring over the captured centipede device and the forensic data from Jax. Fitz and Simmons, fueled by copious amounts of coffee, were deep in the throes of containment simulations. Coulson's comms chimed, the specific signature making him straighten. "Romanoff, status report." "Black Widow to Watchtower. I have eyes on Site Gamma, coordinates inbound. It's a heavily fortified, underground facility disguised as a natural rock formation way out in the wilderness south-southwest of Boston, northeast of your current position." Natasha's voice was crisp, devoid of static, despite the distance. Coulson's gaze snapped to the tactical display, watching as a new red pinpoint appeared on the map, nestled deep within a seemingly unblemished patch of forest. "Understood. Visual confirmation?" "Affirmative. There's a main energy core that's been transported inside. I observed the operatives I designated Wraith and Director entering. Shadow is also present." May's jaw tightened at the mention of Shadow. His elusive nature made him a prime concern. What's their objective, Romanov? Coulson pressed. They're stabilizing the core. It's drawing ambient energy, harnessing something alien, I suspect Chitauri power. They called it Phase 2, and they mentioned an anomalous biological interaction during the field test, something that interfered with the initial overload. I'm thinking that was you, May. May's eyes flickered to the centipede device, a new understanding dawning. Her instinctive reaction to contain it hadn't just been a physical act, it had been an unquantified variable in Centipede's equation. Chitauri tech, weaponized ambient energy, Daisy murmured, her voice laced with dread. They're building something big, something devastating. My assessment, Natasha continued, her voice grim, is that this is a primary R&D playground, possibly for a larger weapon or power source. I also observed an open briefcase, identical to the one we recovered, containing what looked like a raw Chitauri power shard. The director operative is supervising its integration. Coulson digested the information, his mind already spinning through possible scenarios. Understood, Romanov. Do not engage. Repeat. Do not engage. This is a high-priority intelligence asset. Maintain surveillance from a secure distance. We're dispatching a reconnaissance drone now. Provide real-time updates on internal activity, if possible, but your safety is paramount. Understood, Watchtower. On station. Natasha's line went silent. Coulson turned to his team. Daisy, initiate the deepest possible satellite scans on those coordinates. I want infrared, ground-penetrating radar, everything you can throw at it. Fitz, Simmons, prioritize creating a countermeasure for that energy core. May, prepare a full extraction plan. We're going to need a strike team, and we're going in hard. The air in the playground crackled with a renewed purpose. The centipede package was no longer an isolated incident. It was a key piece in a much larger, more dangerous puzzle. Site Gamma was clearly central to Centipede's plans, and S.H.I.E.L.D. now had a target. High in the oak tree, Natasha shifted, adjusting her position to get a better view of the fortified entrance. The drone, a tiny, almost invisible speck against the night sky, was already en route, its advanced sensors already beginning to map the terrain. She watched as a detail of armed guards changed shifts, their movements crisp and disciplined. Inside, she could imagine the hum of the energy core, the cold gleam of the Chitauri shard. Her mind replayed the fragments of conversation she had overheard. Stabilizing, Phase 2, director. This wasn't just a threat, it was an escalation. Centipede was no longer content with human experimentation and enhanced soldiers. They were now dabbling in alien power on a grand scale, clearly building something with global implications. The silent vigil stretched on. The forest around her was still, save for the whisper of the leaves through the leaves and the distant chirping of crickets. Natasha Romanov remained motionless, a shadow waiting in the darkness, the weight of the intelligence she held pressing down on her. She was the eyes of S.H.I.E.L.D., the first line of defense against an unknown enemy preparing its next move. She knew this was just the beginning. The fight for the centipede core had just moved from a rain-slicked warehouse to a hidden fortress in the woods, and the stakes had just gone interstellar.